As a follow-up to our police decision-making and discretionary decision PowerPoint, I want to talk about some of these other aspects of making the best decision possible. Some of the things that occur are impediments to sound decision-making, one of which, the first one we'll talk about, has to do with fatigue. As a police officer, you're going to run into a lot of fatigue issues. You have a 10-hour shift, you're usually in patrol if you're working patrol. You might wind up going to court. If you work a graveyard shift, you're waking up in the middle of your sleep time to go to court. Then you go back to work at 9 p.m. or something of that nature with an inadequate level of sleep. So fatigue is always going to be an issue. And so be aware of that, because sometimes if you're tired, you're not going to make the best decision. You're not going to be, ready to roll. Being rushed sometimes, that can be dangerous. It can be fatal. It has been for some officers. You have to be aware of when you need to be patient and not rush into a situation, not overexpose yourself to danger because you want to get a call over with quickly because something else you want to do. Laziness, sometimes just being lazy can help a person, an officer, make a very bad decision. Personal biases, the way you see the world, the way you see citizens, the way you see your fellow officers. If you have kind of a torqued view of, different individuals and people and their merits, that can be dangerous also. That can be harmful to your career and help you make a bad decision itself. Insufficient information, part of the critical thinking process is garnering information to help you make the best decision. If you decide to go to a particular college for your bachelor's degree, hopefully you're going to gather information that helps you make the best decision using critical thinking skills. Maybe you're going to look at college at what courses do they have to offer, what degrees do they have to offer to help me get the job that I want to get, what are the costs, what are the travel distances involved, where are the classes located at, how difficult is it to get into that college. So you're going to do your homework, and the same thing goes with making good decisions. You're going to have to do some searching of information to help you come up with the best decision. Some of the worst decisions that police ever make are ones that were made based on lacking information, based on gut, or based on assumptions. You can't make a good decision that way. Ignorance can be a problem. If you're just unfamiliar with what the laws state, if you're unfamiliar with policy procedures, if you're unfamiliar with other organizations, if you're unfamiliar with the citizens in your community, and you don't bother to learn these things, that can cause you a lot of problems and destroy your career. And finally, just simply a lack of confidence. To be an effective officer, you have to be pretty confident in what you're doing out there. And if you don't have the confidence, you need to develop the skills and abilities and develop your confidence level so that you can be an effective decision maker out there. Again, we talked about in the discretionary decision making PowerPoint the different types of variables that you're dealing with, whether it be the offender, the differences in the different offenders, and each person is different. So their background, their capabilities are going to be different. The situation you run into, one of the big attractants for policing is the fact that you will never run into the same exact situation. Every situation is different, and that is the challenge of policing, that you have to be able to make the best decision based on what you know and what you've investigated, what you've learned from the situation there. And then again, those system variables that you have to be cognizant of to make sure that you make the best decision that's consistent with the community, consistent with the priorities of your agency. So here's some priorities that I offer to you in order to make the best decisions. Number one, maintain your integrity. Okay? You have to make sure that you maintain not only your integrity, but the department's integrity. So for example, maybe you're doing something that is okay, there's nothing breaking the rules or the orders, but maybe if it looks bad to the community, maybe you not ought to be doing that. So for example, I'll give you an example of some city workers. Sometimes city workers work these shifts like maybe a 4 a.m. to noon shift or something of that nature, and they take a lunch break at about 9 o'clock. And people see these workers taking a lunch break, and they think they're just messing around. They're supposed to be working, not realizing that's their lunch break. So if it looks bad, maybe they should have just had their lunch someplace else where it's not in the public eye. Maybe they should have gone to the office or whatever, just to avoid the appearance of wrongdoing. Be fair and just. This is just simply said that use the best discretionary decision making ability that you can. And a lot of times, all citizens want from police officers is for them to be fair and just, treat everyone equally, everyone the same way. You want to minimize liability. That's a big issue in policing. They talk about it in the police academy. You have to be very cognizant of what you're doing and how it relates to exposing your agency to some liability. So you want to be extra careful about that. You have to have a set of priorities. In other words, you want to be able to take the community first as your priority number one, then the department comes next, and then you come last. Sorry, but you come last in that order. So you're doing things that are good for the community, the department, and anytime an officer starts thinking, me, what's in it for me, I guarantee you they will run into a lot of problems and wind up with some discipline or termination. Solve the problem. When you make decisions on what you're doing, don't just put band-aids on the problems you're dealing with. Try to come to some solutions and have long-term positive results. And of course, use your critical thinking skills. You want to make sure that you are investigating, acquiring all of the information. Let's go ahead and look at that right now. Identify the issue, number one. What is the problem, the issue? Determine the needs, right? You're gathering resources. This is kind of the analysis part of that SARA model, scanning, analysis, response, and assessment. Evaluate the resources. Utilize your resources. In other words, do something. And then you assess the results. This is basically the SARA model, but it's also the formula for critical thinking skills. Something to keep in mind. If you can do this, you will have no problems working as a police officer. You'll do a much better job in making effective, sound, explainable decisions. And as long as you can justify what you do, that happens a lot where somebody, your superior officer, may come to you and ask you, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Well, as long as you can explain and give a rational explanation as to why you made the decision to arrest or not arrest somebody, or to impound property or not impound property, as long as you can explain it, you're in fine shape. As long as you can justify your actions, you'll have no problems. So use those critical thinking skills in not only in policing, but in your everyday life, and it'll carry you a long way.